What if I told you that one of South Africa's strangest murder cases involved three different people? A millionaire who was stabbed inside of her own luxury estate, a woman accused of undergoing an occult transformation, as well as a Houdini of crime who had escaped Botswana in the 1980s. And this would all result in a death inside Westville Prison that still doesn't quite make any sense. This is the Radloff case, and it is way darker than anyone ever told you. Now, welcome to my channel. My name is Carrie, and today we are talking about the Occult Unit case files, a case in which they investigated, and this was the Radloff case. So it was Thursday morning in Westville Prison, and a warden rushes to cell 12 after terrified inmates start screaming. Inside the cell is a dead woman. 35-year-old Antoinette Christina Radloff lies sprawled on the cold floor. A shoelace is wrapped tightly around her neck, so tight that her own hands are still gripping it. But here's the part that investigators just don't quite get. It looked as though she strangled herself, slowly, manually, and with her own hands and a shoelace. Something that is almost impossible to do without passing out. Now, next to her body is a note, and in that note it says that the contents of her life, which is basically her wedding ring, must be returned to her husband, Dr. Martin Radloff. And the rest of the contents in that note, we will never know because it vanished. It was either mislaid or it was lost, but according to various sources, it had been written in Afrikaans and the warden had struggled to read it. So the only suicide note of South Africa's most sensational murder case disappeared. Accident or something darker? Now, we have to rewind to September 1999, and this is in Scottsboro in KwaZulu-Natal. And millionaire businesswoman Rena Radloff is 51 years old, and she is found brutally stabbed in her home. There is blood everywhere. The magistrate would describe it as one of the bloodiest scenes she has ever seen. And there is a trail of blood that leads to her study, and on her desk, a bizarre note is left there, a riddle. Downstairs, strange pictures, 5-pointed stars, and shadowy figures are seen. Occult symbols, according to investigators that arrived on the scene of the crime. But here's the twist. Nothing was ever stolen, not even the 48,000 rand that was hidden in the lampshades. Who kills a wealthy woman, leaves no money except occult symbolism behind? 2 weeks later, police start receiving letters and faxes containing intimate details that only the killer could know. One envelope allegedly held an invitation for investigators to attend a spiritual event in Magaliesburg, but it arrived only after the event. Now, in these notes that were sent, Rena was murdered between 6 and 7 p.m. These notes refer to details such as the exact time of the murder, and they also refer to the bizarre symbols that were found in the office where she was murdered. And the writer, according to investigators, Afrikaans speaking, perhaps people who have been close to the family or the community. But here is where this case shifts into African X-Files territory. The man who first brought Antoinette in for questioning, the person ultimately accused of the murder of Rena Radloff, wasn't a normal detective. It was Dr. Kobus Jonker, head of South Africa's occult-related crimes unit, the only one of its kind in the world. Now, Jonker, known as the Hound of God, has investigated hundreds of alleged ritualistic and satanic cases in the 80s and 90s. He has spoken at schools, he has written manuals on how to identify Satanists, and claimed that he had broken up several satanic rings, and there's only one that managed to evade him in the Eastern Cape. Now, his criteria for spotting the occult included the following, probably some of the things that would have landed me on the list when I was younger. These include playing fantasy games, having weird bedroom redecorations, hair draped over one eye, gender confusion, as well as rejecting parental values. Now, we must remember this is the height of the satanic panic in South Africa. This is the 1990s, a moral frenzy that has been fueled by religious paranoia. So when Jonker saw occult style notes, symbols, and letters, with secret knowledge, he zeroed in on Antoinette Radloff, a woman tabloids would describe as eccentric, spiritual, and capable of transformation. South Africa watched, fascinated, a little bit terrified, and obsessed. In 2000, 3 men were arrested in connection with Rena Radloff's murder. Mngolisi Mzile, 20 years old, he was later sentenced to life, along with a 17-year-old who was sentenced to 18 years. His name cannot be revealed because he was underage at the time, as well as Safiko Cele. He was granted immunity after testifying against his two co-accused. Now, according to court testimony, they were allegedly hired by Antoinette herself. When she was arrested, Antoinette was clutching a book about astro travel. She was well known in the community for describing herself as a witch, placing hexes on people perhaps, and she often described herself as using her powers for good. She would also claim that she would be able to move things around with her eyes, and in order to have telepathic powers, she would go into the U magazine and she would assert these facts. She supposedly fetched them, promising them work. They claimed that when they entered Rena's home, when she opened the door, that Mngolisi stabbed her in the throat. But as she lay dying, bleeding out in her study, Rena whispered something chilling to her domestic worker who had come to intervene and was desperately trying to save Rena's life. She said, "There is a white man in the house," and she said it shortly before passing away. Who was he? Investigators noticed that Martin Radloff, a wealthy doctor, Rena's ex-husband, and Antoinette's current husband, drove a green Mercedes. Did Rhea seen him? Was he another man, or was he hallucinating? Because the 3 accused would later say that they were hired by a white man in a Mercedes. Or is there a 4th conspirator that never surfaced? Before her death, Antoinette pulled off a cinematic escape that made headlines. During a hospital visit, allegedly for an illness during a bail application, she slipped off her handcuffs, pulled out her drift, and walked out of the ICU and disappeared. Her ex-husband Martin had once been nicknamed Houdini of the crime world for famously evading the Botswana legal system in the 1980s. He later became a state witness in the high-profile fraud case involving Winnie Mandela. So when Antoinette vanished, people whispered, was this another Radloff that was pulling a Houdini act? Was someone just simply disappearing? But after 3 days on the run, disorientated and bruised, she was found hiding in a Montclair home. The occupants told police that she tried to tear off the newspaper front page showing her escape. She mumbled about a car accident and a place of safety. After her second lawyer quit, she was held without bail, and then just days afterwards, she was found dead in her cell. Now, we know that Antoinette had spoken about suicide the night before. Cellmates said that she'd been writing that famous letter that we would never find. She had allegedly attempted suicide before, even though one attempt was staged. Investigators believed in order to get her into hospital for an escape. But here's the problem. It is nearly impossible to manually strangle yourself to death with a shoelace. You pass out before you complete the strangulation. Your hands relax, your grip loosens, and your body slumps. Yet when she was found, her hands were still tightly gripping that lace. And the only note that might have explained her final state of mind, gone, lost, misplaced. We will never know. 4 years after Rena's murder, the final piece of the puzzle, Martin Radloff, and he has never been charged, although he was always a suspect. The man at the center of the storm, the man who was perhaps suspected of driving that Mercedes, died in a Johannesburg airport at the age of 50 years old from a heart attack. And this is not unusual for people to die in bathrooms. It happens all the time because people will often go into the bathroom because they're not feeling well and then they will pass on. One wife murdered, another one dead in prison, one husband collapsing alone in an airport cubicle. 3 lives ruined. A case drenched in symbolism, secrecy, accusations of occult involvement, and unanswered questions. Now we have to ask ourselves, was Antoinette guilty? Or was she a victim of the satanic panic that was happening in South Africa during this time? And also, what really happened to Antoinette Radloff while she was in jail? Was it genuine suicide? Was it assisted suicide, perhaps by some of her cellmates? Or was she silenced? We got to look about things such as the missing suicide note, the occult undertones, and the whispered things about the white man being in the house point to perhaps a conspiracy. And fourth explanation is, was this entire case influenced or contaminated by the satanic panic that was gripping South Africa at the time? What theory did you buy? Drop your theories in the comments below. I read and reply to every single one. And if you want or have a case suggestion or a story that you would like to tell me, drop a comment or drop an email, because things are getting spooky.